what is it that we're talking about today is the tenant demographic that you choose. So what exactly does that mean? That's a big word, right? So what is it? It really means the profile. Who are you wanting your tenants to be? Who are you wanting to deal with for the next year, or hopefully more, longer, on a regular basis? Who are you partnering with in this business? Because really they do become a partner. They become your biggest asset.
Your number one client is your tenant, right?
Yeah. Anita Rudacek put on in the Fearless group a couple of weeks ago, she says, yes, landed, $14,000 client. And I had to look at it closer. And what she meant was, they place a tenant. And if you think of it that way, that you're not just, filling a vacancy. No, this person is paying you 14, 20, 25, whatever it might be, $1,000 in a year. They're gonna take care of your place for the most part. They're gonna, do the grass and the lawn. They're gonna, make sure that the place doesn't burn down. And they're gonna leave after giving you that 25 grand or that 20 grand,
and
whatever it is.
And expect nothing back.
And ask nothing from you.
Yeah.
So these really, really are our greatest assets, our number one clients, like Corey just said. So how do we choose who we're going to use? And why is that important? So first off, we're just going to hit it again. I know I mentioned it a minute ago, but for those that are just jumping on, the reason we're so passionate about this subject is because if you can't last in real estate, if you get in and get out within 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it might be, you've gotten a chunk of change often, you've made some money, you've maybe made some monthly cash flow or made money on the sale, but your life is no different than it was when you started. Your life is no different. The whole reason you got into real estate was to change your life, and you're going to go back to the same life, that same job, that same time crunching, all of those things that you wanted to avoid, you're going to come back into them. And so we really, really, try to help people to last longer, because if you can last that 7 to 10 year period, yes, it's not get rich quick. Are there ways to make money faster? Yes. Are there strategies you can use to make money faster? Yes. However, 7 to 10 years is when your mortgages start getting paid down by tens of thousands every single year. Your cash flow has gone up because, generally speaking, rents have gone up, and you're still got the same expenses on this place. So that's when you really start to see an increase in equity and really start to experience that power of real estate. So that's why we're talking about tenant demographics. Sounds weird, right? We're talking about tenant demographic. Who's your profile? Who's your partner going to be in real estate for the next year, renting your places? But really, it has to do with the bigger picture of staying in real estate, taking out some of the emotional decisions, not allowing things to overtake you.
When you think about it, when somebody tells you that they're getting out of real estate investment, 9 out of 10 times, the reason that they get out of it, they want to sell that property, they want to get rid of it, they want to jump ship on their dreams, is because they can't stand dealing with their tenants, right? So they're picking the wrong ones to begin with. They have not defined the tenant demographic that they should have for that particular property or that particular neighborhood. And so that's why these things are so important, because we want you guys to not only get into real estate investment, but we want you to be successful, but last long enough. And that's what Tiff's talking about, because it's really the time that goes by when that mortgage gets paid down and that property goes up in value, and you start cash flowing more and more and more as years go on. So being very specific when it comes to your tenant demographic is so important right from the very beginning.
So, okay guys, so when do we choose that demographic? You have to start with the end in mind, okay, when it comes to your demographic. Now, that means that you want to choose your demographic before you buy the place. That's ideal. Now, in reality, did we do that? No. Do I have a bunch of properties that I now, have to kind of finagle into being the demographic that we want? Absolutely. So if you're in that position, don't worry about it. But if you're in the position where you can start from scratch and choose your tenant demographic before you buy your property, lucky you, good for you. Here's a couple things you want to keep in mind. So first off, a lot of people look at the house and they kind of go, okay, well, this is a C house, in a B neighborhood. I can do something with it, right? I can make it prettier. I can deal with that. Great. Who's the person that's going to move into it after you make it pretty? And what kind of person's going to live in that area? Now, the opposite, though, a lot of people will make the mistake of saying, all right, so now I have a B property. It's a decent property, and I can do a lot with this thing. And the price point, man, the price is great. It's going to cash flow awesome. But it is in a C, if not D area. So now what happens? Now what happens is you think you're going to attract a certain person or certain demographic based on your house. But let me tell you, the area surrounding is also going to determine who moves in or if they move in. So if you're in the position to be able to choose your tenant demographic before, you want to look at the area. Is it walkable? Are you looking at talking to millennials? You know, they want walkable. They want trendy cafes. They want gyms in the area. You know, is that who you're talking to? Or is it a young family? If it is, are there parks in the area? Is there a rec center for swimming lessons and all that kind of stuff? Are there schools? If it's a brand new area and they have to bus their kids to school, is that okay with your tenant demographic? These are the kinds of things you have to think about for area as well as for house. And a lot of people make the mistake of just looking at the house.
Well, and sometimes what a lot of people will do is they'll just look at how much this property could potentially cash flow. And they're not taking into account, well, I'm going to have higher vacancies because this neighborhood, people move in, they don't typically stay very long. So my vacancy rate, they're in and out, in and out. Where you're buying has a lot to do with your tenant demographic. Certain tenants live in certain areas. Who do you want to rent to? Like, for example, up in North Edmonton, it's close to a military base. So a lot of our tenants for those properties come because they're working on the military base and they want to live close to it. They want to live off the base. And so those properties that we have up in that part of the woods is perfect for renting to that type of demographic, which we absolutely love. But we have properties in other areas where could we rent them, in let's say West Edmonton, could we rent that to somebody on the military base? Well, no, it doesn't make any sense. So we would have a different tenant demographic for that location in the city. So that's where it comes down to where you're going to be buying and what type of properties you're going to be buying makes a big difference as to what type of tenants you're going to attract. And so that's something right from the beginning, if you have the opportunity to find out, make sure that you find out. Talk to property managers, talk to other owners in that area that are renting out. And these are the types of things. What kind of people are renting in that particular area? Yeah.
So we're going to go through 4 different things that this will help you do, okay? When we get to the why should we choose this? So we're covering when right now. We're going to do the how. What does that mean? Like, what kinds of things do we have to look for? What things don't matter? What things do matter? So when we get to the how, then we're going to go into the why. 4 different ways. This is going to make your life way easier as a landlord. And believe me, you're going to thank yourself for doing this if you listen. It will absolutely make your life easier. It's going to make 4 main decisions that we do on a weekly probably basis, some of us. And it's going to make these decisions simple. We're not going to have to think about it. There won't be any emotion involved because we have from the outset chosen exactly how we want this to look, and then we make everyone else fit into that. So that's what we're going to go through today. But what is tenant demographic? What are some of the things that are important? So obviously we're talking about like the 3 main ones really.
The age of the people that are going to be renting. Are we renting it to, let's say, seniors? Are we renting it to students? Are we renting to young families? So what age group typically would be renting that type of property? So for example, one of our properties in South Edmonton is 1 level. There's no stairs. It's close to grocery shopping. It's close to everything. That property rents really well to seniors, and we've had awesome experience renting to seniors in that particular location.
Though, right?
That's because they don't like the stairs, and it's 1 level. So these are the types of things. Again, age is a big part of a potential tenant demographic.
Yeah, so you can set your age range. So you're not going to say, oh, I need a 35-year-old or a 65-year-old. You're going to say, am I renting to, under 30s, that millennial crowd, like that young professional couple or that, young trendy couple or that young trendy single person? Am I renting to families? So are they going to be like 30 to 45 years of age and have kids that are, under 10 kind of thing? Or are they going to be, you can set your range. So for example, in a lot of our places, because the type of places we ended up finding out worked best for us, those are the ones that we bought more of. For me, it was families, like young families, moms staying at home, or for a while, or childcare is costing them an arm and a leg. So right now, they can't afford to live in something that they really, really want to, I'm sure. The second one is your income level, their income level. So you can do it a couple different ways. You can say, I need them to have 3 times the amount of rent on this place per month coming in. And that's a really good standard. That's one that the banks use. It's 30% of their income approximately is going to go to their housing. So you can do it based on that, or you can have it be a standard, I want them to be making $80,000 a year, or $40,000 a year, or whatever it might be. So you can set that stipulation. And again, the beauty of this is it's a set it and forget it. You're going to set your age group, and then you're going to do everything, all of your marketing, all of your screening, all of your advertising, everything. You're going to do that toward that age group. You're going to then also move that into their income. All right, so I'm talking to these people. Where are these people? And we're going to go through this in a little bit, but are these people, these higher income people, are they on LinkedIn instead of on Instagram? Or are they on Instagram instead of LinkedIn? Where are the people that you are definitively setting yourself as your goals, definitively, where do they hang out? And that, again, you're going to center your stuff all around that. So age, income level, and credit. Now, credit's a huge one. So for those of you that know us, you'll know that credit is absolutely non-negotiable in our portfolio now. And the reason that
doesn't mean that they have to have perfect credit.
No,
right?
They don't have to have perfect credit, but it does have to be above average. And if there is a glitch in their credit, that's fine. But I can clearly see where it's been fine, and then there's a glitch, and then fine.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's so patterns, right?
It's patterns. I'm looking, and this is what I tell all my tenants. I am looking for habits. If you are in the habit of not paying your bills, I am eventually going to be just next on your list. Mm-hmm. So I am looking for habits. If you get a bad cell phone bill or whatever that's, an argument that's gone down, that's okay by me, but I'll be able to see that was a one-off, not your habit. Mm-hmm. So we set our parameters for credit at certain things for certain properties. I would love to be able to say, every property I have, you have to have a 720 credit across the board. We did have some properties that we had a 720 was our limit, but those were executive, large executive, beautiful homes. So, but our credit, and I'll just share with you what ours is, what our limits are. Again, it's a set it and forget it. If people don't hit that credit for that property that I've preset, then they can't rent it from me. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to feel bad for them if they're, a single mom with kids, and I feel bad, and I don't have to think about it. The parameter is this much for credit.
So really what you're saying is that helps you to take the emotion out of making that decision as to whether you're going to rent to somebody or not, is if you set those standard parameters and the people meet them, great, that's a yes. If they don't meet them, that's a no. It's not an emotional should I not, and every single time you're bringing a tenant in, you're trying to make these decisions and come up with these decisions. It's a standard that you set beforehand, you set it, you follow it, and your decisions are made for you.
So I'll just tell you our levels, and you have to decide your own, and it's dependent on area and on property usually. But for me, in our lower end properties, so ones that we probably never should have bought, but we bought 15 years ago and we still have them, those properties we have a limit of 630 is the lowest that we'll take. That's not a major high score, but it's also not super low. It's not, they haven't messed up their credit. So 630 in those ones, 680 in the nicer ones. So, we used to have it be over 700, but as the tenant demographic has changed and as Alberta's market has changed, we actually had to bring that down to 680. So that is now our limit in our nicer properties, is if they don't fit that, if they don't meet that, people say, I could get a cosigner for them then. I don't even go there, because quite frankly, I feel that how people do one thing with their credit, especially in finances, is how they do a lot of things. And so, quoting Dr. Phil and editing it a little bit. And so, you know, I'm sorry, but if they don't take care of their finances, I don't feel they're going to take care of my house. And so we generally don't move on those things. 630 for our lower end units, 680 for our higher end units. We don't have any executive stuff anymore. So, but those were 720 when we did. Maybe that gives you a bit of a parameter. If you have any questions, let me know.
And it doesn't mean that you guys have to have that same number, but
Nope.
what's the point? The point is to figure out what your number is based on
And
that
then,
property.
Who has to stick to it? It's like teenagers. If you don't stick to it, they're not going to stick to it. You have to be the one to stick to it. So if you set your income, your age, your credit, maybe you set whether or not they have kids, maybe you set whether or not they have pets, you can decide whatever you want. But once you set it, that's not negotiable. You now use this as your parameter going forward for making your decisions.
And
your decisions
this goes
become
for
easier.
whether you are managing it yourself or you have a property manager doing
Absolutely.
it as well. If you have hired a property manager, you tell your property manager what your minimum qualifications are. And we always suggest you have to be so involved in managing your manager. So even though you might have a property manager, don't leave all of those decisions up to them. You should still be approving your tenants or not approving certain tenants. Because ultimately, if things go sideways, it's you that's paying the bill. Remember, this is your business. This is your future. You're doing this to get closer to your why, not your property managers. So you have to be very strict when it comes to making those decisions. It's best to do it right at the very beginning before you buy a property. But if you haven't set that specific parameters as the type of tenants you're going to be taking in.
And Corey, I saw your post in Fearless. That was such an awesome idea, and it was an overwhelming answer for you, which I thought was just made things so much easier when you don't have to make decisions, right? So, like Corey says, you know, a few weeks ago she was trying to decide between 3 very different, very strong tenants in different ways. All of them wanted the place. She felt bad turning them down. But exactly, Corey, like if you had these parameters set in place, then you don't have to worry about those decisions, and those decisions are automatic. Who am I renting to? Do they fit the profile? Yes or no? So it's such an awesome thing, and it just takes the emotion out. So really good question, Candace. Can those ads parameters be put in an ad non-discriminatory way? So absolutely. So we are going to talk about actually your ads. I'll answer that question right now though anyways. So can you put it in? Absolutely. Our ideal tenant is young family that has kids under 10 who want a backyard to play in, that's fully fenced, and mom can, you know, safely watch from the kitchen. You know, I say stuff like that in our ads all the time. Can you put it the other way and be like, weed out the ones you don't want? Yeah, my ads always say, if you're a partier and you know it, please apply elsewhere, as noise complaints will not be tolerated. So am I filtering out in my ads? 100%. You know, lots of times I'll say specific, like there's a military turnover right now, and so we've got, you know, lots of military stuff happening, and so I'll put right in my headlines, military people. That's my demographic, because they can ride their bikes to work, and often military, especially when they're first starting out, they don't have a huge income, and so if they are a family, you want a safe place for your, you know, wife and kids. You want a playground nearby, and you want to be able to ride your bike to work, so you don't have to have another vehicle. This is the place for you. It's perfect. So yes, absolutely. Can you do that? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute here.
One other really good question, Julie. Where do you go to do the background and credit checks?
TVS is a good one to use, but a really good one that I've been finding.
So they could just Google TVS or Google.
Tenant verification systems.
Okay. Who else do you use? Background
Neighborly,
checks.
thank you.
Neighborly. Okay.
Neighborly now charges for it. It is no longer free, but they give you a really good check, and it's you know, it's same price as all the rest of them. People say, oh well, it's, you know,
what does it cost?
$25. It's $25.
25
ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that gives you a credit check.
Yeah, and a bit of a background check.
Okay.
They do like a neighborhood kind of sweep, and they check, like, for example, you know, their address that they have in on their application that you've put in. It gives you like a Google Earth, so you can see like their yard, and you can see their vehicles often, and, you know, is it where they said it was, all that kind of stuff. Again, why are we doing this? Why are we talking tenant demographic? We are talking this because it makes our decisions easier. It makes our life easier as a landlord, as investors, and we want easy decisions. Like Corey had posted in Fearless a couple weeks ago, trying to make a decision. feeling guilty about that. We don't need that emotion. We've got enough emotion as investors. We don't need that emotion. So here's some things you can do. Putting these tenant demographic things in place.
It's really
and then
creating
you set
standards,
it and forget it.
right? You create standards. You're creating maybe like a policy manual for your rental company, you know?
Yeah.
So this is exactly what you're going to stick to, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. And because, you know, a lot of times the emotions run really, really high, especially if that property's been vacant for longer than we wanted it to be. And now you're sitting on a vacant property, and maybe another month is coming, and maybe winter is coming, and you're starting to get a little bit nervous. And then those standards go down, and then that's really where you can end up making big mistakes.
Has anyone had that happen to you?
Make those standards and stick to them.
That's right, for sure. Have you guys had that happen to you? Put it in the comments. Who has, and I can put up about 15 hands for this one, who has lowered your standard of who you wanted to accept because you were desperate and emotional? You might not have thought of yourself that way, but you just knew you were stressed about it, and you put someone in a property, or thought about putting someone in a property that you really should never even have thought of. But when we get in those tight places, emotionally, mentally, as investors, we don't make the best decisions. So here's a way: you put these standards in place, you don't have a decision to make. It happens or it doesn't. It fits or it doesn't.
Good question from Candace.
Right, Black Bear?
With stricter criteria, do you have to account for higher vacancies, contingencies? Because you're being strict. You're not just taking anyone. You're probably going to be vacant longer. That's kind of what she's asking. What do you think about that?
You know what, Candace? Not in my experience. I think because you get really good at, you know, we're going to talk about advertising in just a second here, at marketing and advertising to who you are talking to, finding where they're hanging out and going to those places. I don't think that you get rid of any good prospects at all. I think you just really use your time better, and instead of, you know, talking to tire kickers for an hour or two every day, you know, you're talking to maybe one or two people that actually fit for 10 or 15 minutes, but they're who you want, and they also want you. So no, I wouldn't say that means a higher contingency. So there's the good news, right?
So true, Danusia. Loss of rent is better than tons of trouble, and it's so true.
Oh, it's so
you know,
much
sometimes
trouble, like
it's
Brian
worth
said
it to
too.
go one more month vacant or something along those lines to get a good tenant versus putting in something that's going to cost you thousands of dollars down the road.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the decisions that are going to become made easier? One, before you purchase your property, things like, have you ever gone into a house where there's like bedrooms on 2 different levels? So the master bedroom, and this is becoming more and more popular in like, not retirement places, but like older kind of people demographics, people for like 55 plus. So the main bedroom will be on one level, and then more bedrooms will either be in the basement or maybe upstairs. So if you've seen that before, I'll tell you what, you know, that there's a decision. Okay, is this a good property? Like, do we buy this one? You know, price range is good, cash flow is going to be good. You know, do we buy this? Guess what? If your tenant demographic is a middle-aged couple that don't have small kids, your decision's made. Yeah, that'll work for who we're looking for. If they have small kids, it probably or might not work, because a mom is going to want to be close to her kids, and especially if they're little and running through the night, and your decision is made for you. If there's a lot of stairs in the property and your tenant demographic is a 55 plus couple and there's a lot of stairs in the place, does it work? You walk into a property, you're pre-purchasing, you're with your realtor, your investment focused realtor, you're looking around, you already know that the numbers work or you wouldn't be in the house, you've already crunched the numbers on this place. Now you're looking at it and you're going, oh my goodness, there's like 50 million stairs in here. And our tenant demographic is 55 plus. This is not going to work. You've saved yourself time. You've saved yourself a decision. Turn around and move on to the next one. Okay, so this is how pre-purchase, this is the number one place that this helps us, is in our pre-purchase. We don't have to think about it. And that is so freeing when we feel the stress of, you know, multiple offers or partners that are wanting us to get their money working for them and moving, and this stuff sets the parameter. We walk away from it. The next number 2 place that this helps us in making our decisions is in renovations. So if we are renovating a property and we don't know what to do and we're unsure of how the decisions we make, we go straight back to that tenant profile. Okay, wait, I am talking to under 30s. I am in an area that has trendy cafes. I've got a cute little small space, property. Who wants to live here? I've already determined it's a under 30 that has a credit score of 680 and makes whatever, $4,500 a month. What do they want? Yeah, they want the gym nearby. They want the Starbucks nearby. Perfect. Check, check. What else do they want in the house? They don't want, brown walls. They don't want dark walls. They want light and airy. They want light blues and light mint greens and all that stuff right now. That's what they want. All right. What's my decision? Paint colors. Decided. Lighting. Is it a middle-aged couple? Guess what? They want a really good workspace on their countertop because they want to be able to cook it with light. Do millennials? No, they just want something funky and cool that looks amazing. That's what they want. Your decisions on lighting? Done. You're no longer walking through Home Depot for hours on end trying to decide. You're just, okay, that's a young couple look. That's a young professional look. That's an older person look. Done. Can you see how your decisions, if you preset your tenant demographic, your decisions are easier? Paint colors, hardwood versus vinyl, whatever it might be, just becomes easier. So the number 2 place that this saves us time and energy mentally as landlords is when we're renovating, even if it's small renovations like paint and lipstick and rouge. So for number 3, advertising to renters. So if you have predetermined the tenant demographic that you're going to use, and you already know how old they're going to be, you know how much money they make, and you know what their credit score is, whether they have pets or kids, you have those kind of few things set out. When you've already got that done, now the first thing you're going to do is you're going to find out where are those people hanging out. Let's say that it's a young couple, professional couple, millennials, young single people. Where are they hanging out? They're on Instagram. They're not on Facebook. They're maybe in Facebook groups, but they're not just scrolling anymore on Facebook. Where are the people that you're talking to hanging out? And that's where you're going to advertise. And again, you're going to set these tenant demographic parameters, and you're not going to touch them. You're going to stick to your guns and say, I said it had to have 680 credit score, so they have to. And you can put that in your ad and say, we're looking for people with above average credit.
I'm just thinking about our property where we rent to seniors or older ones, much older than 57, by the way.
They really are.
we go to the grocery store and pin up on the board or that sort of thing. Or for the military properties where we have military people living in them, we advertise out on the base and we contact the base and post it out there.
We used to be on the basis register even,
because we know what our tenant demographic is for those particular properties. We know where to go to advertise for those particular properties. And as you get into this longer and you have that property for longer, you're going to learn what works and what doesn't. And so being very specific in that tenant demographic makes it so much easier.
Okay, so when in our pre-purchase, before we buy it, in our renovations that we're making, now in our advertising, it makes us easier. We don't have to be everywhere. We just need to be where our tenant demographic is hanging out. Now, let's say we get to the point where we're screening. Let's say that we have found, a decent tenant, and now we have to screen them. We have to do those credit checks. We have to, ask them for an application, all that kind of stuff. Again, this is a set it and forget it. You've already determined before you bought this place, or if not, shortly after, and when you're renting this place out, their income level is going to be this much. Their credit score is going to be this much. They're, not going to have kids, or they are going to have kids, whatever it is. You've set these parameters down. Income being 3 times the amount of rent. We often do it that way. You don't have an emotional decision to make now. If you've got a place that's across the street from a Harley Davidson place, hangout spot, and a biker pulls up, but your tenant demographic is of a family, does that fit? Yay or nay? It does not. There's no emotional decision. If you've got a place across from a Harley Davidson hangout spot and a family pulls in and your demographic is preferably a biker because that's who's going to be around and that's that they're not going to mind the noise and all that kind of stuff, then when a family pulls up, are they your tenant demographic? No, they're not. that decision is made. It's easier for you. It's way less emotion. And again, with less emotion, we last longer in real estate. Hopefully to the point that where your cash flow actually turns to wealth. All of these things really come into play when we're vacant. Because when we're vacant, we're stressed. We often will let our standards down. And maybe we don't, but we want to. And that struggle to be like, oh, should I just take them? Should I not? What's the pros? What's the con? Just the thought process behind that in itself is exhausting. It takes away all of that emotion.
And it may be fine.
Those things.
It might be fine if you have 1 or 2 properties, but when you get to the point where you have several and you might have a few vacancies at the same time or something along those lines, that's when it really becomes stressful. And that's where people say, you know what? Enough of this. I can't handle this anymore. This is taking over my life. And that's when they start to think about selling and getting out of real estate investment. So these tips that we're talking about, guys, just to reiterate it, are to help you stay in this game long term. We have to stay in it long term for us to really make the money that we need to make when it comes to real estate. So taking emotions out on these types of decisions, such as the tenants, and being very specific when it comes to our demographic that we're going to attract, especially during the buying process. If we can make those decisions up front, it's going to make our life so much easier.
And again, just to reiterate that it's that time in real estate that turns cash flow to wealth. Okay. And it's that wealth and that freedom that we want for you. We don't want you to come in and be, in real estate for a few years, make some money and get out. We want you to come in and then get out and go back to the same jobs that you had and the same, full-time 9 to 5. We don't want that for you. We want you to be able to come into this and know that, if you can stick around 7 to 10 years, you've now changed your life and you've actually created freedom of choice in it. And that's where the real power becomes. So why are we talking about tenant demographics when we're talking about this? Because it's what we feel, a very important part of your longevity in real estate. So we are going to, there was a question. I saw Danuja had a question. Is there a specific place that you can advertise in Ottawa? You know what, Danuja, I have 2 ways that I get military families. So one is by creating relationships with relocation agents, because the military often has a relocation agent and oftentimes they're realtors that will, and other times like Welcome Home Relocations is one that we've used for many years. They will be assigned to a military family to help them relocate, get their bank accounts, find their schools, all that kind of stuff, find a property, insurance, all that stuff. So Welcome Home Relocations or any other relocation agents. So if you Google relocation agent military Ottawa, oftentimes you'll get some realtors that come up, and it's because they have an agreement with the military to be those people. So that's one place. You can then, every time we had a vacancy in these places, we don't really have to do that anymore just because we've got these relationships with them now. But I had a list of people that are relocation agents that deal with the military, and anytime there was one, I would just send it off to them and just email it to them, say, hey, here's some pictures, here's the write-up, or now I would probably send a link. That's one way. The other way that we get them for the military is I just advertise on whatever the best websites. So if you were military, in the military, what areas would you want to live in? So, make sure you're buying in those areas or own in those areas, or if you already do, then you would just, put in the, an ad as a headline, attention military families or attention military guys. I had one place that wasn't so nice, and so I was like, hey, a bunch of military guys want to live here, I don't care. So there was 3 bedrooms upstairs and 2 down. So I had for a couple of years, and they're great because this is the beauty of military. They don't pay their rent. You call their commander and believe me, you have a check the next day. They're not allowed to not pay their rent. So, and they're not allowed to damage your place either. And they have to keep it clean. So they're ideal tenants where someone else is watching over that for you. So anyways, that's it. That's today's training, guys. So
tenant demographic, the importance of it. We talked about so many different things, when to choose it right at the very beginning, if you possibly can, how to choose it, what are some of the things to look for, age, the income levels, I don't know if we did talk about it much, but even whether you're going to accept kids or whether you're going to accept pets, make those decisions up front when it comes to a property if you at all can. And why it's so important, because it can change how you're going to renovate a property. It's going to change how you're going to advertise that property and who you're going to advertise it to and where you're going to advertise it on what platforms. And also the screening processes. Some of the things that Tiff mentioned is depending on the property and the location, our credit limit as far as the lowest amount that we'll accept. In some properties is as low as 630 and in some properties it's as low as 680. So depending on which property, you make that decision as to what you will accept as your bottom line. Remember, the whole point of all of this is if you make these decisions before you try renting a place, if you make those decisions at that point, then you're not going to have that emotional drain.
Yeah.
You're not going to have
Decisions
to make all of those
easier.
decisions on the spot or under pressure. Those decisions are already made and you just follow your system. And that's really what saves people and keeps them in real estate long enough for it to have a big effect on their pocketbook.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys all. Awesome. I see everyone signing off. So yeah. Okay. Take care, everyone. Cheers. And we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.